You are listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 23rd of July 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Briefing, in association with Addis. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's program, protesters take to the streets of Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities for once not angry with Russia, but their own government. After that.
And that was done with Japan. They had their top people here, and we worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody.
The big, beautiful trade deal with Japan is announced, sending stocks surging, but the devil, as always, is in the details. We'll also look at a Franco-German summit hoping to diffuse tensions over fighter jets, and
I'm surrounded by people wearing some super cool clothes, super nice brands, so there is something happening, and we've been part of this culture.
Fernando Augusto Pacheco explores the music label of French fashion brand Maison Kitsune. We'll also have the fashion news. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. For the past 3.5 years of war, Volodymyr Zelensky has rarely made a misstep that would cost him significant support in his own country. But last night in Kyiv saw thousands take to the streets for the first time since Russia's invasion to protest a new law that undermines the independence of the country's anti-corruption agencies and, more importantly, puts Ukraine's reputation as a democracy that's willing to tackle graft on the line. It's also rankled European allies just as they were about to formally open negotiation chapters over EU membership, and it's arguably a gift to Russia as well ahead of talks between the two warring nations. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Andrew Muller, Monocle's contributing editor, and by Hannah Lucinda Smith, Monocle's Istanbul correspondent. Andrew, let me start with you on this. These weren't the biggest protests Ukraine has ever seen, obviously. More are planned, though, for tonight. Volodymyr Zelensky, he's defending this bill, even as he kind of tries to play some damage control today. He's meeting with these agency heads. Has he misread the mood here?
I can't imagine that he didn't anticipate this. I think he is well aware of what the mood is, and I think he is, unless he has lost touch sensationally, well aware that this would raise recollections of 2013, and people have invoked that when, of course, former President Yanukovych did an about-face on EU accession, which led to the Euromaidan revolt of 2014, and to Yanukovych himself being chased out of the country. It's difficult to know what Zelensky thinks the actual upside of doing this is. What we have heard so far is that he is concerned about Russian influence on these two anti-corruption agencies, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. Now, that's probably not impossible, which is to say, if Russia was not trying to infiltrate these two agencies, I don't know what Russia has been doing all day, but it plays into suspicions which have long been at large in Ukraine about certain tendencies that Zelensky has exhibited throughout his life towards wanting things done on his terms and nobody else's.
It also plays into Ukraine's past reputation as a place that did struggle with corruption, was one of the more corrupt nations in Europe. And we're already seeing concerns from European allies about this, delaying talks on membership. The OECD is warning this could impact investment in Ukraine's defense sector. I mean, when you say there that Zelensky maybe was ready for the reaction here to some degree, is he ready for the reaction from Europe if it really has this impact on investment?
I mean, again, it's hard to imagine he would not have anticipated that, which again does raise as yet unanswered questions as to why he thinks this is worth doing, because the EU, as much as Ukraine's own people, were impressed by Zelensky even before the war for coming to office on a position of absolutely ruthless anti-corruption. This is something he'd set himself up for by playing the character Vasyl Holoborodko, this sort of charming, if somewhat gormless schoolteacher in a sitcom called Servant of the People, who accidentally becomes president when his rant about Ukraine's corruption goes viral. So to take a step like this does undermine or would appear to undermine at least the very basis of Zelensky's reputation.
Hannah, to bring you in on this from Istanbul, this does come as there are talks with Russia. I mean, how has this impacted the preparations for that? Do we expect those talks to maybe yield even less now than they might have otherwise?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a good starting point to begin with, particularly the kind of signals that are coming from Moscow, very cynical, not particularly expecting many results, according to Dmitry Peskov, who is the Kremlin spokesperson. Again, as has happened in May and in June here in Istanbul, it's not going to be a high-level meeting. It's a sort of lower-level delegation. The expectation is that probably prisoner exchanges will result from this, but probably not any real progress in calling a halt to the war. And I think what's happened in Ukraine over the past 24 hours is just going to give more leverage to the Russian delegation.
More leverage, and to stick with you, Hannah, does it also take some of the pressure off of Russia? Because ahead of this, the pressure would have been on them after particularly Donald Trump's 50-day ultimatum.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a distraction. And, it comes as well at a time when, Russia is still, doing drone attacks and bombing Ukrainian cities. So I think certainly on that front. But I think, generally, as I said, there is a mood of cynicism. Yesterday, when this meeting was announced, the officials here in Turkey initially said that meeting was going to start at midday. Then they said a few hours later, actually, no, it's going to start at 7 p.m. I mean, that doesn't really sort of bode well for a long and fruitful meeting here in Istanbul.
Andrew, when it comes to the reaction to this, we've seen these protests. Even the Klitschko's, the mayor, was part of the protest. There is talk of preparations for a counter bill in Ukraine's parliament. All of that brings to mind for me the question of, have we turned a corner with Zelensky? Because there is always that thing, right, of a country's opposition not willing to criticize a leader in wartime.
The criticism of Zelensky the last 3.5 years has been muted, and I think it's been quite sincerely muted. I think, as listeners may recall, I was in Odessa about a month ago at the Black Sea Security Forum, at which I met many opposition MPs, and even talking to them off the record, they said, and many of them did say, that there were aspects of Zelensky they were vexed with, not least his inclinations as they saw it towards authoritarianism. But they did all understand that, he's not as popular as he was 3.5 years ago, but he is still overwhelmingly popular. Criticism has always existed, and I think it is impressive that the Kyiv Independent, which I recommend to our listeners today, as always, has been right out in front of this. But they have, I think, there's always been a more clear-eyed view of President Zelensky inside Ukraine than outside it, I think. And if there is one thing we have learnt from Ukrainians or about Ukrainians in the last 3.5 years, is that they are not a people who stand for much being pushed around when somebody tries to impose something upon them they don't like.
Well, certainly that's the case. And just quickly to follow up on that, do you think, is there any room for Zelensky to maybe roll this back to show, if there is a suggestion that this is moving towards an autocracy, might he answer that by actually listening to some of the criticism?
I can't see that he doesn't have to do or say something. There were some optimistic voices late last night that even after this bill had passed Ukraine's parliament and wound up on his desk, that he might veto it. He did not. He signed it, so the bill is now law. He will have to make, I think, some sort of statement or some sort of gesture to make it absolutely clear why he has done this, because an assumption is already taking root that what he is doing is trying to protect, if not himself, then his own inner circle.
Just finally, Hannah, to come to you quickly, how has this been covered in Turkey itself? Has this been a big deal, what's happening in Ukraine with this corruption bill?
Yeah, well, I think really the only sort of real winner out of these, mediations in Istanbul is Turkey itself and President Erdogan, who's managed to really frame himself as quite a powerful mediator in this conflict. He's one of the very few world leaders that has a foot in both camps. He's obviously a NATO member, ally of Ukraine, but also has this kind of personal relationship with Vladimir Putin that allows him to bring the two sides together. So, there's a huge amount of, effort from Erdogan's camp to really push that line. It's a line that's been repeated in editorials in the US and in Europe. So really, Turkey, from being on the verge of being a pariah state, a decade ago, endless spats with Europe, with NATO, and now has really repositioned itself at the very, very heart of Europe.
Hannah Lucinda Smith in Istanbul and Andrew Muller right here in London. Thank you for both for joining us. And now here's Carlotta Rebello with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. The U.S. House has passed a law banning Pentagon maps that show Taiwan as part of China. The Honest Maps rule comes with $500 million in aid for Taiwan's defense. Lawmakers say the move supports Taiwan's independence. India will allow Chinese tourists to apply for visas again, ending curbs put in place after a deadly border clash in 2020. The change takes effect on Thursday, according to the Indian embassy in China. Both countries have recently agreed to ease visa rules and boost media and think tank exchanges. And K-pop band 17 will go on a global tour from September. The concerts follow the release of their fifth album, Happy Birthday, marking their 10th anniversary. Taylor Swift is the only artist to have sold more records than 17 last year. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Carlotta. President Trump has announced what he called a massive trade agreement with Japan, though it doesn't mean that the Asian ally gets off scot-free. The U.S. has set its tariff rate for Japan at 15%. That is down from 25 to 30% as part of the deal, which also includes a $550 billion Japanese investment commitment in the U.S., requires Japan to open its markets for cars and rice. Japanese stocks have surged on the news, auto companies in particular seeing double-digit gains. And I'm joined now for more on this by Tomohiko Taniguchi, former special advisor to the cabinet of Shinzo Abe, the former prime minister. Tomohiko, always good to have you on the show. The devil, as I said at the outset, is in the details for this, as it always is. These are sort of trade frameworks, but what do we know?
Devils, we don't know yet. The only thing we know so far is that we were told that we would have to undergo 25-year imprisonment, but we were now just told it's going to be 15 years. Is this a good reason for us to rejoice at? But the Nikkei stock index has surged, reflecting that there's been a great sigh of relief for sure on the Japanese side about the reduction of the tariff rates from 25 to 15, especially when it comes to the automotive sector, which is the biggest employer in the country. There's been a growing anxiety that with 25% tariff rate, it's going to be very much difficult for the Japanese automotive industry to thrive. So it's a good news, but how good and what sort of details, we don't know yet.
We certainly don't know, but I wonder if the reason for the optimism, I mean, going from 25 to 15% in and of itself, you know, is good, but it's not great, which begs to mind, I guess, the question, is this more about Japan now feeling at least it's not being punished as bad as other countries?
Yeah, that's what I feel. It's certainly much, much worse than before. By before, it means pre-Trump era. But certainly better than 25%, and better even if compared to other examples some countries have already shown. So it's a good deal, generally speaking, and the massive amount of investment, I think, is going to be centered around natural resources. The biggest investment objective is to cultivate Alaska-based natural gas to be shipped to Japan. I think it makes a lot of sense economically, and I think it's going to reduce quite a sizable amount of trade deficit seen from the United States.
So, Tomohiko, that's one aspect that might be positive in this, maybe also for Japan's economy. But tell us about the other side of what Japan has conceded to here, the opening of automotive markets and also rice, which was particularly controversial ahead of this.
As regards rice, there is an arrangement, so-called minimum access. That means that you're going to impose no tariff whatsoever on the imported rice. And that's been in place for quite some time. And it's got a quota. And the quota itself, they say, is not going to be changed. But the composition of the imported rice would be made largely in favor of rice to be exported from the United States to Japan. So that seems to be an arrangement.
Tomohiko, just one other thing we wanted to get your take on while you are with us. There are some reports that Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba will resign after the Senate upper house elections last week, I should say, or over the weekend. Do you have any sense of that? He has denied this. Do you think that the Prime Minister might actually resign?
It's going to be decided by the intra-party power struggle that is to gain currency day in and day by until 28th of this month, when members of the parliament belonging to the same party, LDP, will gather. The focal point at the moment is that gathering is going to be a decisive mandate with which they can either oust or choose another prime minister, or it's going to be just a discussion. So one party within the party may say that this is going to be just a discussion, and another would say, no, this is going to be a decision-making body. So that's the sort of struggle. Ishiba appears to be determined to stick to where it is.
We will see what happens. I'm sure we'll be covering that as well. Tomohiko Taniguchi, former special advisor to the cabinet of Shinzo Abe. Thank you very much for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio.
How long do you think it would take you to travel the world to hear from the most perceptive and relevant speakers on the global news agenda? To mix that up with a trip to visit the business people benchmarking best practice in media, retail and hospitality. And to make time, too, to delve into a rich mix of great design stories and rich cultural discoveries. Well, you can do all of this in just 60 minutes each week by tuning into The Curator, a whistle-stop tour of the best of the last 7 days on Monocle Radio. Subscribe and download the show now, or listen every weekend on Monocle Radio.
You are back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Chermak. France's Emmanuel Macron heads to Berlin for a dinner meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz later today. No doubt discussing our last two items on this show, Ukraine and how the EU can get its own trade deal with President Trump. But they're also hoping to smooth over a rift over common European defence projects, specifically a next-generation fighter jet that France and Germany are hoping to build together, if only they can agree on sort of the division of labour and spoils on the project. Well, I'm joined now from Milan by Ed Stalker, Monocle's Europe editor-at-large. Ed, good to have you back on the show. I wanted to start with the general relationship between these two leaders. What do you make of the Merz-Macron? We can't really call it a bromance, can we? But it's better than Scholz-Macron.
Yeah, indeed. And look, these are the two European powerhouses. It's in both their interests to have good relations. Let's just say that relations haven't always been easy between the two nations, and this meeting is vital to sort of keep it back on track, keep it in good stead. And as you mentioned, they're going to be talking about everything from sort of Ukraine to tariffs, but also this hope that they can get back on track again, as you mentioned, this future combat air system, FCAS, or just to confuse you further, SCAF as it's known in France, this sixth generation stealth fighter jet that France and Germany are hoping to build together. Spain is also involved, and Belgium joined the grouping as an observer from last year. But it's encountered quite a lot of problems to date already, Chris.
It has caused a lot of problems. As you said, there's a lot of countries involved here, but the focus has been on France and Germany and the companies from France and Germany that are involved. Why has this fighter jet feud become such a thing?
Yeah, so basically the two main companies involved are Dassault Aviation, which is French, and Airbus, which of course has a big base in France, but it's a multinational, and it's entering this grouping with its German and Spanish subsidiaries. The issue really it seems to be that we've got two giants of European defence who are involved in this attempt to build this sixth generation fighter. There seems to be competition at play. One of them, Airbus, is responsible for the current Eurofighter, and Dassault is responsible for the French Rafale fighter jet. Obviously, they both have technologies for both those planes, which they don't seem to be sharing necessarily with each other in order to build this new plane. Dassault as well has made it clear its CEO has been quite outspoken in the media about the governance of this future combat air system needing to change. Dassault feeling that it needs to be really leading this project. At the moment, there's an even split between nations, so France, Germany, and Spain. Dassault would like to have more of a leadership role. Some suggestions in the media that they want as much as 80%, although that has been rebutted by its CEO. So those are some of the problems that are really meaning that it could fall behind. There was even a suggestion at one point that Dassault Aviation might walk away. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but they need to work out best how they can share in a way that's going to work for everyone in order to advance on with this. And one further point, Chris, is that this is in very marked difference. This is very different, really, to how it's playing out with the GCAP, the fighter that's being produced by the UK, Italy, and Japan. That seems to be experiencing far fewer problems and is even on track, if all goes to plan, to produce the plane earlier than the FCAS.
Well, and on that, Ed, just finally, I mean, that in itself suggests that Europe is struggling to get on the same defence page, isn't it? You've been focusing more on GCAP because you've also been speaking with Italian defence bosses. They're ploughing ahead with this UK, Japan, Italian version. What do they make of that and how it's been going?
Yeah, I've been visiting Leonardo, which is one of the Italian defence player that's headquartered in Rome. I went to one of their bases in Sardinia, and I'd also interviewed its CEO Roberto Cingolani a few months back in Rome. I remember him talking about one of the things he said. He talked about strong collaboration with clear work share. That's sort of one of his mantras for advancing Leonardo, and really that seems to be why GCAP is working. It seems to be that the three players in this BAE Systems in the UK, Leonardo, of course, in Italy, and this new company, Japan Aircraft Industrial Enhancement, they seem to know their roles. They even created recently a joint venture called Edgewing, which is going to be headquartered in the UK to really cement the division of tasks. So it seems that the structure is better. There's still a long way to go in all of this, to be honest with you. The FCAS is looking to produce its first plane by around 2040. GCAP is ahead, though. As I said before, it's looking to produce its first plane in 2035. So although all these people are friends, they're all in alliance, there is a certain amount of rivalry nonetheless, especially as other countries like Turkey and China are also looking to produce this sixth generation. But at the end of the day, at the moment anyway, Chris, it looks like GCAP is in the lead.
Ed Stalker, Monocle's Europe editor-at-large, thank you very much for joining us. This is The Briefing. You are back with The Briefing, and it's time now for a roundup of news from the world of fashion. And for that, I am joined right here in the studio by Monocle's fashion director, Natalie Theodosi. Good afternoon, Natalie.
Good afternoon. Happy to be back in the studio.
Always good to speak with you. We're going to start with a little bit of crystal balling. Is that the way to put it? Because LVMH has results coming out tomorrow. What can we expect?
Everyone is waiting for those results and looking at what's happening in the market. I think at this point, we shouldn't be expecting any big surprise or even big improvements, because the strategies that LVMH has been putting in place, the collections by the new creative directors they've been hiring are not yet in store. So it's going to take 6 months to a year until we see how that will play out and if it will help turn around LVMH's fortune. So I would expect the last quarter had a 3% dip. I would expect something similar. It is challenging at the moment, and what will be interesting is that this quarter's results will be an indication of whether there has been any improvement in China and also the impact of business in the US, because even the conversation around tariffs has impacted consumer confidence. So that's what I'd be looking at tomorrow.
Is this your way of saying to everybody, Natalie, kind of hold your horses, calm down, relax, maybe watch the next set of results in another 3 months?
Exactly. I think there is this, especially in the fashion industry, this sense of urgency and this kind of tendency to jump into conclusions, but it does take time. There's a lot of, as we've been speaking on this show, hiring, firing, these musical chairs of creative directors, but it takes, Jonathan Anderson, who has taken over Dior, and that's one of the biggest loss makers and the biggest problems within the portfolio. He said that turning a house around and rebuilding it takes 6 months to a year, and it's going to be a long process. So exactly like you say, Chris, everyone needs to hold their horses and just wait and see.
Have a little bit of patience, people. We do want to talk also about fashion weeks, because we always love talking fashion weeks with you, Natalie, and it is New York Fashion Week. What's happening there? Who are the players?
So New York Fashion Week has just released its official calendar, giving us a glimpse at what's going to be happening in September. And what was interesting is that everyone is calling the season of the reboot, because there are all these changes inside the houses, but also I think the cities, the dynamics of the different fashion capitals, the role of each city and how what their purpose is changing a lot. There's newcomers like Berlin and Copenhagen trying to take the place of as a fashion capital. So New York has been struggling, but there's a new generation of brands like Kate, new talent like Ashleen, a brand that we actually are featuring in the new issue of Confect. And the CFDA is making a lot of effort to nurture this young talent. And the new generation of bigger houses like Kate, Tory Burch, a more established name, is having a bit of a renaissance. So there's more reason, I think, now to visit New York. And if they do a good job and create a calendar that mixes in established names with up-and-coming talent, maybe editors will start making the trip back to New York in September.
We'll see what happens when September comes and can talk about it more then. But one other thing we wanted to discuss, Natalie, the rise of the fashion exhibition. This is another aspect of the world of fashion. Versace is opening in London.
I think that's one of the elements that's making me the most excited, more than fashion weeks, Chris, because any fashion exhibition that I've been to lately seems a lot more emotional, more immersive into the world of a brand. And given that fashion has gone mainstream, there's a lot more awareness and a lot more interest in these fashion houses. The exhibition and that format is a lot more interesting and becoming a lot more popular. So yes, there's a great Versace exhibition at the Arches in London Bridge. I think around 400 rare and vintage pieces by Gianni Versace. And it's quite an interesting moment to see it, because Donatella Versace has stepped down from her position as creative director, and there will be a whole new chapter unveiled in September by an incoming designer called Dario Vitale, who used to work for Miuccia Prada. But also I would recommend Eric Owen's exhibition in the Palais Galliera, and also the Victoria and Albert Museum has just announced 2 new exhibitions for next year, one on Elsa Schiaparelli, Coco Chanel's arch rival, and Marie Antoinette as well. So a lot to look forward to and explore if you're interested in fashion.
So many to see. just quickly on that? I mean, has there been a change? Why so many fashion exhibitions now? Is it like a recognition from the brands that this is a way to market themselves and kind of open the door?
Definitely.
Unveil the curtain, behind the curtain.
I think so. And I think because there have been so many changes in the houses, this is a way to reaffirm their histories and the heritage and to remind people that there's still a sense of stability and history to draw from. I thought it was really interesting that at Balenciaga, where Demna, its creative director, is leaving after 10 years, they also use the exhibition format to take customers through his greatest hits after 10 years, and they did the exhibition in the Kering HQ. And what was interesting is that as soon as they use technology, so as soon as you went near some of the pieces, you could also hear him talk you through his creative process. And I think we will be starting to see a lot more of this interesting formats and bringing technology into the equation. And it's storytelling, it's really immersive, and it's more democratic than the fashion show, so I'm all for it.
Natalie Theodosi, Monocle's fashion director, thank you for joining us as always. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Finally, on today's show, Kitsune Musique is the music label from the French fashion brand Maison Kitsune, known for their excellent electronic music compilations. After a surprising hiatus, the venture is back with the man who's been behind it all for 3 decades, Antoine Kenobi Ressaussière. Earlier, Monocle Radio's Fernando Augusto Pacheco sat down with Antoine at Monocle's studio in Paris to tell us more about the return.
Why you wanna do me like that? Why you playing on? Why you wanna do me like that?
And tell me a little bit the story. Of course, I've been a fan of the compilations. I love it so much. And all the rest of the music. There was some kind of hiatus with the music side of things. But I was so glad when I saw on Instagram that was back. I was like, I need to speak to Antoine about this. So tell us about the hiatus and why the return. And as you said, it's quite an exciting return as well.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think COVID has been really important. Maison Kitsune is still independent, so now we've got like a full expansion, like with the shops, mostly in Asia, with the cafe.
You're just in Korea just recently, like,
okay?
So in Seoul, right?
So with like all the rise of this different business, at the same time, the music business changed so much, because when you start Kitsune, it was vinyl. After twist into like compilation. After that, it was iTunes, and after it was streaming, and the relation with the music business becomes really, really tricky. So Gildas on his side say, okay, let's put on hold. Why the restart? There was a COVID, which killed a little bit the vibe also with the music. So Gildas said, okay, put on hold. And the origin story, I was in Ibiza. I didn't work for Maison Kitsune like daily. I was at Circo Loco, the party in DC10, the famous club in Ibiza. And I give a call to Gildas and was like, oh, I'm in DC10. He was in Japan, so not on the same timing. I say, yeah, in front of me there is like a Wu Med Wu, a brand that we released records 17 years ago. They are playing now some electronic cool music. I'm surrounded by people wearing some super cool clothes, super nice brands with like so there is something happening, and we've been part of this culture. And electronic music is so exciting. Kitsune music has not been like only into electronic, but it's the music we love with Gildas and we share. And so we said, we just discussed and said, yeah, but maybe it's time to relaunch it, maybe to reshape a little bit about what is the expression. Electronic music in many ways is like so cool for us, because we still enjoying to have party with DJs, to discover new songs from DJs. This music travel, I always use this expression that the electronic music use the same road as Maison Kitsune because it's international. It's the people can vibe on the same music from Mexico to like Indonesia to Japan. This is the magic of like the music, and particularly the magic of electronic music. So we just give some call. We start by giving calls like, why not like just having some projects together? It was not a question of relaunching records 1 year ago. Let's discuss, because we want to see like some people we like wearing some Maison Kitsune. So I take like the plane, I travel to see there was and there is new phenomena in electronic music, new brands coming up. And when I met this uprising brand, like for the like maybe people are aware of it, like the Canny music, which is like super famous at the moment.
Yes.
These 3 DJs from Berlin. The first days to relaunch the music at Kitsune, I say, okay, I take a ticket, I fly to Berlin to meet Canny music. So first of all, I send an email saying, Canny music, I would like to meet you. Maybe you know about it. I'm part of Maison Kitsune. And they just respond like, of course we know.
Of course.
We've got like a full collection of compilation. Please, let's meet in Berlin. So I try, and we spend a lot of time together. They explained to me like, they built the brand, and they were like, please tell us about how you built Maison Kitsune. Let's share some tips and stuff like that. And it was so exciting that at this moment with electronic music there is like a new global and independent brand coming, so exciting. So it was definitely the time to relaunch this dynamic with music.
I'm so excited, and I was looking. There are a lot of new releases as well, and people you've worked before, like Digitalism as well. Give us a little taster.
Today we will launch like a Digitalism, yeah.
So give us a little taster of what music is coming up, or what have you released so far?
The original idea of Maison Kitsune, I've always been into curation. I think it's like a super early phase. What is a Maison Kitsune compilation? It's now a playlist. And I think we've been quite good on playlist. I think definitely Gildas is one of the best curators of music in the world. So it's why the Kitsune music compilation was so good. I'm not so bad on curation too. And what's going to happen? What happens to Maison Kitsune? What's going to happen? Like a full curation. The idea is like, okay, we got to focus on electronic music, and particularly music for the DJs and for the dance floor. So the dance music going to be our playground.
Antoine Kenobi-Ressourcière of Kitsune Music there, speaking to Monocle's senior correspondent Fernando Augusto Pacheco. You can hear more of that interview and others from the cultural realm on the Monocle Weekly. Check out the page on monocle.com. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Laura Kramer and Ryuma Takahashi. Our researcher was Henry King, and our studio manager was Flynn Simons. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.